Over the weekend, I had a job seeker approach me, and they said, SP, I'm afraid of success. I know what success looks like. I know what I need to do. I know I can get there, but I'm afraid to do it. And the closer I get to it, the more afraid I become. And I thought about this question for a little bit, and this person is not the first person I've ever encountered like this. And maybe some of you are the same way. Maybe some of you are concerned that you're not going to succeed in life. And so to answer the person's question, I decided I need to take it to the old marker board, and we need to have a discussion about success in the workplace, about fear of success. Now, to get started, there's a couple things I do want to touch on, and these are kind of important. These are important to understand because they affect all of us as we're building our careers. And so if we could get rid of this fear of success here, the first thing that we need to understand is that there are unfounded fears, and whether we like it or not, there are founded fears. Okay? And these are basically situations to where you're in the workplace, you're working, and you have the opportunity to advance. You know how to advance your career, but you're afraid to do it. And you're afraid to do it because of some unfounded fear. Meaning, I'm not going to be smart enough. I'm not going to be pretty enough. I'm not going to know how to do the job. I don't have enough experience. Whatever it is. Unfounded. And we'll cover this a little bit later. But then there are some that are very, very founded reasons to fear success. Or fear an attempt to success, I should say. Because that in itself is an important part of this. An important part of this equation is that just because you know you're here making $60K per year and you know you can get to $120K and you know you're 95% sure that's going to work out, this is not guaranteed. This is not guaranteed at all. There's a 5% chance that instead of going from 60, you may go down to 30. Right? And this is the thing that that causes the fear. But, let's go over a few of these things. So let's do a couple graphs here. So the first thing is we just want to do the anxiety graph. Anxiety. And as it goes up, as your anxiety goes up, so does your doubt. We have doubt. Your doubt goes up. And so any situation that you're in that causes anxiety, that causes concern, there's going to be a little bit of doubt that plays in. Now, this may not be true for everybody, but for the most part of the people that I've observed, people who are extremely anxious about their situation have a lot of doubt about whether they can succeed in the next stage of their career. Now, another one that's very important, it comes with, we were talking about taking risk, having high stakes in a high stakes situation. And generally speaking, again, if we increase the stakes, and then here we have time. And over time, as the stakes increase, we have the inverse reaction of the willingness to take risk. This is risk taking. And so as you get older, so this spot right here is going to be about 40 years old. So as you get older, as time progresses, and there's a lot of reasons for that, and we'll actually go through that shortly, but as the stakes increase, your willingness to do risky things goes down. Now, one of the reasons that I found, that I've observed from job seekers, is that typically what happens is they find something that works. Right? So they're working in a job, they're struggling, they're fighting, they're trying to get somewhere in life, and they finally find something that works. And their desire to keep fighting and keep risk taking plummets. And what happens when you find something that works? You get comfortable. So yeah, you get comfortable in your situation. You don't really want to have to deal with any of the discomfort of being risk-taking, or so you become extremely risk-adverse. So let's put this in your head. Try to imagine this. You're trying to cross a creek. You're trying to cross a creek, and you're a person, and you're right here. Okay? Let's just say this is you. Right? This person right here is you, and you're trying to get to the other side of the creek. Now just imagine that this is right here, this is your career. And if you get over here, if you can get to the other side, right? Over here, money. Okay? Lots of money. And so you're trying to get over to the other side of the creek. But the only way you can get there is there are little tiny stepping stones. Right here, 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 here. And if you can take a step on each of these, you know that your money is going to keep getting bigger. Your career is going to continue to grow. But with each step, there's a chance that one of these rocks right here, one of these stepping stones, is not really a stepping stone. It might be a turtle or something, or the rock might wobble a little bit, and you end up falling into the water. I'll put a little smiley face on them. Right? So people are worried that they're going to be this guy right here, that this is what's going to happen to them. And let's put this in a graph so we can more clearly see what we're talking about here. And so let's put together this little graph. And a graph is a little bit different. I just want to talk about progression. So if this is the beginning of your career, let's just say 20 years old, and you're starting off in life, and say these are dollars, okay? And at about age 28 is roughly about the time when people finally discover that maybe something isn't quite right and they should maybe be optimizing their careers a little bit better, but they don't figure it out till they're about 28, and then they're in recovery mode. They're in reclamation mode. And so what happens is once they realize they've made a mistake, they try to make up for lost time. And unfortunately, this takes a few years to about their 32. And somewhere in here, their wages go up. They put in a lot of hard work right in this area. You see that? A lot of hard work. This is the hardest thing. Most people, especially if you grew up in a city, this is the hardest thing you've ever done in your life. You had to go from being this person who, maybe you have 3 kids, maybe you have a wife, maybe you have a house, and these things motivated you, or whatever it is, or you just figured out that things needed to change. And you did the hardest thing in your life, and you got the degree, you got the entry-level job, you built experience, and you've made it to this new plateau. You've been here. And you think about all the people who ever complain about the rich people or young people that say, I can't get a job, all the old people have the work. It's not because all the old people have the work. It's because young people haven't figured out how to make it to this plateau yet. And unfortunately, it takes a lot of time to figure out how to get to this level. Now, as you can expect, there's more space here. There is another stage in which you decide that you're going to go for it. This is, this might be, let's call this level 1 right here. And here we have level 2. And this is where most people end. Most people end on level 2. But there's another phase where people work hard and they get to another plateau. And there's another one over here. And you can keep going up these plateaus. But I'm focusing here because of the topic that we're discussing today, which is the fear of success. And so if you don't have a fear of success, level 4, 5, 6 aren't going to be a big deal for you. But going from level 2 to level 3, this is a big deal. And the problem that people have is that you see all the space down here? There is the possibility that if things go wrong while you're trying to get to level 3, that you may instead end up going back down to level 1. And then you're going to spend the rest of your life, we'll say 50, 60, you're going to spend the rest of your life trying to get back to level 2. And you may never do it. Some people don't. It's very common, actually, once people reach a certain age, about 40, 45, 50, maybe they become grandparents or something of that nature, where they stop. And so a person's general progression, actually, through life is they do level 1 work, you probably can't see it. They do level 1 work, they get to level 2, and then they go back down to level 1. That's actually extremely typical. This is where people make most of their money and set themselves up for the rest of their lives. And so what happens is people don't want to blow it. They go, oh gosh, let's keep the money train going as long as possible so it doesn't go down here, but maybe it goes down like that. And this is why, so probably around here is around to 40. Around here is where people freeze. This is where people make the mistake. Down here, the risk is minimal because if you're level 1, you can crash to level 0. I mean, it's pretty easy to get back up to level 1. But getting to level 2, now that's something. Now, if you're wondering, level 1 is under $50,000. Level 2 is 50 to 100, actually 120. And then level 3, you start getting 120, to 180. This becomes difficult. And then, obviously it goes up from there. Okay. So kind of trying to understand the situation that we're in, there are what I consider the 6 biggest factors that affect risk, that increased risk that changes whether you're willing to take risk or not. And so these are the 6 things from my perspective that really affect it. The first thing is age. Now, when you think about it, as you get older, you become more responsible. You maybe have a lot more things going on. Generally speaking, if you look at all data points mushed together, as you get older, your willingness to take on risk goes down. But there are actually factors for that, so let's go through those. One of these that is never talked about, and it's very important, health. I'll tell you what, when you have that first heart episode, as you're trying to work and you're trying to better your life, and suddenly things don't feel so good and you have to go to the hospital, you have to get on some medication, you realize you're running out of time. You're running out of time. And suddenly one of 2 things is going to happen. Either you try to hold on to what you've got, or you decide to try to be more risky and try to go for it because you don't have much time left. The next thing is a super generalization is gender. Generally speaking, men are more willing to take risks than women. That's just kind of how life is. It's not with everybody. Everybody's different. Everybody has a tolerance to risk. Tolerant to risk. Okay? That's kind of the way things go. Marital status. This is huge. Huge, huge. Marital status. I want you to imagine yourself as single. Maybe some of you are single. Maybe you've never been married. You have no kids. And so over a lifetime of an individual, I know yet another graph, but as your age, generally speaking, we're looking at this sort of graph where as you're getting to being, 60, 70 years old, and this is risk and success. Okay? So when you're young, you're willing to do whatever it takes. It doesn't really bother you because nothing could possibly go wrong. There's nothing going on in your life. You have no responsibilities. And then as you take on responsibilities and you stabilize yourself, you get set. And then eventually at the end, you kind of drop off. And so with this risk and success over time, generally speaking, over time, your risk and your success will eventually come to an end and you will be known as retired. Right? And so if you're a single person, never had kids, never married, and you spend your entire life, at some point, age is going to become an issue. Age and health. We'll just put those two things together. And if you're single, you're going to follow that trend. Now, if you're... The thing to understand about this is that when you're by yourself, you're not concerned at all about the outcome of the risk that you're taking. You're not worried about it. And so over a longer period of time, you're able to take advantage of your willingness to take risks. And so I guess that's really kind of what we're looking at, willingness to risk. Okay, so that's what this line is, willingness to risk. But if you're single, and because you've been divorced or you have kids, or you're all by yourself, you got to pay the doctor bills, you got to be the one with the car, you're a single parent, or maybe you're divorced and you're paying alimony, whatever it may be. If you have kids and you're single, do you think the amount of time that you're willing to take risks is going to be shorter or longer? Yeah, it's going to be a lot shorter. So instead of coming down this far, you're going to get to about this point. And so if you're single and you've got kids, you're going to have to abandon risk a lot earlier than if you don't have kids. Now, you might be thinking, oh man, it's the best idea to simply just not have kids. Well, wait just a moment. If you are married, and I mean married, and you're in a good relationship, meaning a good, healthy relationship where you work with each other. Now, when I've worked with couples who are trying to build their careers, typically what I see here is I see one person working, and then as they're working, the other person is taking risks. And then as that person starts to fulfill the benefit of taking the risk, then the other person starts taking risks. So it's not that people who are married end up getting a longer time to take risks. It's just that collectively between the two of them, what happens is they end up with extra time here to take risks. We'll call it married. We'll call it the happy married, right? Because that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about like dysfunctional families and that sort of thing. I'm not talking about that. This is the willingness to take risk graph. There's one last one I do want to talk about, and that is debt. the factor of debt and what it plays on people for this willingness to take risk chart is we end up in a situation to where typically you're looking at a graph like this. So every person starts their life, this is what it looks like. If you're 12 right now, this is what your life looks like. Your willingness to take risks is very high here, and by the time you're old, it's down here. If you get debt, now just so we're clear, I believe debt is the devil, right? You don't want debt, it ruins your life. And not because you're paying for things in the future that you can't afford now. It's not because you're paying those things, it's because it removes your willingness, it reduces, it stifles your willingness to take on debt. And so this hindrance, what happens is you come down here and then you start getting debt. And instead of having this nice plateau here where you get to take on regular, a healthy amount of debt over a long period of time, you start wavering. And it trends downwards, of course, just like this line does. But you see all this unrealized success? This is because you took on debt. And you'll never get any of this back, no matter how much you try to reclaim it. You won't ever get it back. And so this is why debt is so evil, why debt is wrong. Now, these are the factors of unfounded reasons, unfounded fears of failure. Now, those were the factors for the unfounded reasons why you're afraid to succeed. There is a real reason. Factor that's founded. And this actually is experienced by many, many people who are in the workplace, many, many people who have worked a nice life, and they get to a certain point, they get to that level 2 area, and then they go, I can't make it to level 3, right? So this founded factor, reasons that you should be concerned. Let's just do it this way. Have you ever heard the phrase, let's just write it on the board, fake it until make it, right? Many of us have heard this. Many, many people say this all the time. Oh, it's fine, just fake it until you make it. But there's a problem. It's assumed that when you fake it, you will always make it. But this isn't true. You can do this and you can have a lot of success. You could have a nice career faking it. But believe it or not, you could actually fake it and not make it. And this is in the founded fear. If you have imposter syndrome, right? If you don't know what that is, imposter syndrome is when you feel like an imposter. You shouldn't be there. You don't belong. Everybody else is really good, but you're not. Now, in reality, you might have a psychological reason that you believe that you don't belong, and actually you might be pretty good. But we have to understand, the imposter syndrome, the fake it till you make it, these are all based off of emotions. They're emotions, they're fears, and sometimes they're founded. And it's when you have the imposter syndrome, but sometimes it's not founded, it's unfounded, I guess you could say. But there are some things we could do from a logic standpoint that can help us. And the first thing that you could do if you find yourself in a situation where you think you're having to fake it till you make it is we have to do SP's 5-year try. So you're going to use my 5-year try. So what this means is for every job that has the potential of $100,000 a year, American dollars. For any career that has the potential of getting you to a 6-figure income, And most people that I run to, that's what they're after. They're after the six-figure income. If the job has the potential of a six-figure income, you give it 5 years. You probably can't see that. 5 years in that industry, in that career. So if you start off as an accountant and you're in public accounting and you say public accounting is just not for me, we'll give it 5 years. And then the fun thing about it is you may be uncertain that entire time. Uncertain. But by 5 years, you will be certain. You will know whether you belong there or you don't. And you'll know that in 5 years. You don't know that at 2, at 3 years. But at 5, you will know whether you belong there or not. Okay, the other thing that I like to do to eliminate a lot of the concerns about jobs is career planning. Whenever I work with somebody, and I discovered this myself when I developed my own career, and that is the job Furno 6-year plan. Now I know 5 and 6 years, you're like, okay, SP, you're being crazy. Why does this matter? Well, these 5 and 6 years can overlap, but they're not exactly the same years. So do you remember earlier? Remember we had the pond and the stepping stones. Do you remember this? And up here we had the destination. Maybe you don't remember. Maybe I didn't say destination earlier. But we had the money, right? Whenever you are planning your career, you always start with the destination. What are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to get to? In 6 years, what do you see yourself doing? And you're going to give yourself 5 years to figure it out. That destination. So let's just do one that's easy for me. Software engineer making 6 figures. Okay? We'll just go with that. So we could say we might have a spot that says software engineer making $80,000. We could have one that, maybe is a developer making $70,000, a programmer making $50,000, then maybe a contractor making $50,000, and then an internship making 10. And then we have a computer science degree, 4 year. Look what just happened. These are each of the stepping stones. The ones that you're afraid is going to be a turtle or that you're going to wobble and fall into the water. These are the stepping stones that you need to get to that destination, to get up to that $100,000 destination. And so let's just go through the checklist. Do I have a C# or not C#? Do I have a computer science degree? No, I don't. Did I get an internship? Yes, I did. Did I contract, programmer, developer? Yes, I did all those things. So suddenly you look and you say, oh man, not only are these stepping stones, this is a check mark. This is a checkbox, a checklist. I can go through and determine and follow over a 6-year period. Maybe you don't cover this in a 6-year period. But for me, I started my 5-year about right there. This took me 5 years. And by the 5th year, I knew whether this was the right career for me or not. I went through that entire checklist. So if you're feeling like you're just not the right person in the workplace, and that you have a fear of getting to the next level. I don't know if you remember earlier we discussed the idea of a level 1, level 2, level 3 type career. Moving from level 2 to 3 is the scariest. And it's the one where people stop. And they stop because they're afraid. They're afraid that they're going to lose what they already have. They're afraid that they're going to lose the comfort that they currently have. They're afraid of advancing. And the fear of failure, in many cases, is completely unfounded. However, there is some reality. Okay? It's not going to work out for everybody. Things are not going to be perfect. And so when it comes down to having a fear of success, yes, you're currently comfortable. You're afraid that you're going to end up losing everything that you currently have. And that's understandable. You're afraid of going down to a level 1 job. And we all get it, okay? We all have that concern that if we fail, things are going to fall apart. That's completely understandable. However, try this. Try putting together your 6-year plan. Try thinking it through and putting it on paper and understanding that you may have to give yourself 5 years before you really feel comfortable. Your confidence may simply be hinged to the fact that you don't have the experience, you don't have the opportunities. And maybe that becomes part of your 6-year plan here. Maybe you're currently working a job. Let's just go through that. Let's just say this is your pond. And your goal is to be, your goal is to have your own CPA firm. What would you need to have your own CPA firm? Now, maybe you don't need it, but it would be a good idea. Maybe you would need to be a CPA for 5 years. And to be a CPA for 5 years, you're going to have to get a CPA certification. And probably, let's just do about 2 years accounting experience. Let's do public accounting. And then prior to that, you might have like accounts receivable, accounts payable experience. But prior to that, maybe you had some sort of contract position. Prior to that, internship. And prior to that, you're going to need a 4-year degree in accounting. And so when you're in this situation, let's just use this hypothetical person. I just laid out what that individual would need to get to a CPA firm. And say, okay, do I have a 4-year accounting degree? Well, if you're an accountant, you better darn well have a 4-year degree. An internship is not required, but maybe you get a contract job. Maybe you get a low-level accounting position. Maybe you start working on real accounting experience. And then you start working on your CPA certification. And if you have that, then at this point, you're looking at 5 years of working as a CPA. And at that point, you'll know because of the 5-year try, if you have the experience to open your own CPA firm. Now, you might put another step in here where you say you might be a CPA at one business for 2 years, and then you put another step, a CPA with a different company for 3 years. And so now you have a diversified experience from different locations. Maybe you even go 2, and maybe a third one, 2, and 2, and then you do the CPA firm. And so that's an example of suddenly when you start looking at it, when you have it in front of your face, when you start mapping it, then it becomes easier to see what it is that you need to accomplish. And it makes it easier to determine what task, what thing you should do next. I hope that helped with your question about fear of success in the workplace. I know it's not the same for everybody, and I know that these tools can help you put in your mind as to what you need to do in order to succeed and take the weight off of your emotions and move it to being something that's purely logic. And I know it's not perfect. It's not going to work for everybody, but I find that works for me, and I find it works for the people that I work with personally. And so if you have any more questions, send me a follow-up email to questions@jobforno.com. And if you have any questions about anything and you want to ask me to put up onto the marker board, send me an email to questions@jobforno.com. And as always, choose skills over money.